Today we play golf.
Let me show you how we do it in the pros.
Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
I never miss with the 7-iron.
A conversation with some of the most interesting innovators and entrepreneurs behind the biggest names in golf.
My friends with the golf clubs. I lived on the golf course. I lived on the driving range.
From pro talk.
You should learn something from each and every single round you play in.
To fun from on and off the green.
Why would you play golf if you don't play it for money?
Just let me put the ball in the hole.
This is Behind the Golf Brand Podcast with Paul Liberatore. Behind the Golf Brand Podcast is sponsored by On Point, the revolutionary three-dimensional domed golf ball marker. On Point provides alignment recognition as small as a degree of inaccuracy from the planned course of the putt face angle. Endorsed by Jim Furyk, U.S. Open champion and 17-time PGA Tour winner. On Point alignment technology has been proven to increase putting performance and help lower your score. Visit onpointgolf.us and be sure to use code GA10 for a 10% discount. On Point, make more putts.
What's up, guys? Paul from Golfers Authority. Welcome to the Behind the Golf Brand Podcast. This week, I have a marketing legend. You'll start laughing because I'll be like, yeah, right. But no, really, he is. When you hear about the stuff he's done, it's going to blow your mind. And I'm really super excited to have Chris McGinley on the show. Chris is how would you say it? Like, he's the CEO of Swing a Line, which is a new training aid. It's been out for a couple of years, really badass. But he also works with V1 Sports. And it's just really exciting to have him on here because in my mind, he's a legend. I was like, holy crap, this guy's done a lot of stuff. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be here. Like, we got a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah, we do. We were like, here's what was happening. We were talking and I was like, I got to start this show because this stuff he's telling me about, I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. So I know you're like an avid listener of the show, and I'm okay with. And so I know you already know. I'm just kidding. He's not.
There is some hero worship here right now.
But my first question, I play this game called Time Machine, and so what is your first memory of golf? That's my first question I always ask.
That's great. My first memory is with my grandfather. He lived on a golf course in Huron, Ohio, and I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. He'd go out and walk his dog every night on the golf course. So I would come with him. And eventually he got me a little cut down club and I would walk along and hit a golf ball. And that's how I got introduced to the game and fell in love with it almost immediately.
It's like those special memories too, like your grandpa, but you're like really close to him too. Like I was super close to my grandfather. So it was like, I don't know. Why is that like that, right? Like that. I don't know. For me, like men are always closer to their grandfather than they are to their dads. I mean, that's what I always find. Yeah, that's true with you, but
my dad was a horrible golfer. I don't think he ever broke 100 in his life, but he loved the game. But my grandfather was an excellent athlete, a really good player, and he's the one that got me hooked. So, and you know how it is, like you said with your dad, you're probably not going to do anything he says, but your grandfather,
no,
worship him. So you should watch
my unboxing video with my dad's training aid. It's actually more funny because I want to kill him during it. But, my dad was one of those golfers that like, if he just stuck with one thing, he'd be really good. Right. But he's always like changing his script, changing. So like, he never got really good because he kept on changing what he was doing. I don't know.
That's the curse of golf, man. You can never master it. So
just pick something and try to get better at it. Like that's what I think.
You're always tinkering.
Yeah. He's a tinkerer, like big time tinkerer. Like he had his first he has 2 patents for golf training aids because he just be like, I read this book by Ben Hogan and he says, I'm going to invent something to do that. And then he would do it. I was like, why don't you just go to the golf course and play? So where did you grow up at? Because you're in California, right?
I'm in California now, but I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So lived in Pittsburgh until I went to college, which I did in Chicago.
Where did you go to school at?
Illinois Institute of Technology.
Oh, I know it is.
IT.
Yeah.
Got an engineering degree that I can't say I ever really used. But
that's okay. I got all kinds of degrees that I never use. So when I had Finnerty on the show, we were talking about that. I'm like, yeah, you go to college and you get these degrees and you think, oh, I'm going to do this. And then you get your first job. You're like, this sucks. And then you realize you're in the rat race, right? That's what happened to me. And I was like, oh, no.
I had that experience. Got my degree, went back to Pittsburgh, got a job with Westinghouse. That lasted about 9 months. And I thought, man, I've got to get out of this. So
So like they gave you like a cubicle of your dreams, and you like are wearing like a buttoned up shirt, and probably it's like sleeveless, and you have a pocket protector. I'm just kidding. But you're like,
it was back in the shirt and tie days, that's for sure.
Oh God,
this is so much better now.
I feel like, yeah. So then you worked. Okay, so before that though, when you were in college or high school, did you play like high school or college golf?
I did. Yep. And, that helped really cement my love for the game. Just competing. I'm very competitive by nature. So golf was a great outlet for that, because you can compete against others. You can compete against yourself. You can compete against the golf course, pick your poison. And there's plenty of opportunity for that in golf. So
how good were you? Like, did you play high school golf, and like, were you like good?
Well, I didn't have a very good high school golf team, but I played number one on the team, and I went to a small college that didn't have much of a golf team either. But the cool thing about in college was we hired Dennis Hull as our athletic director, the Chicago Blackhawks hockey player.
I was going to say that. I'm like, really? Holy crap.
And he was kind of our de facto golf coach, but he was also buddies with Stan Mikita, another hockey legend.
I know Stan Mikita. I know Stan Mikita.
So Stan was actually like our formal golf coach, but I don't think
Shut up, for real?
I don't think we ever saw him. So
was this after they retired, like in the 80s? I would say, because they played in the 70s. That's when the Blackhawks were like the team in the 70s. My mom and dad, we're from Chicago. My family is, and so like they talk about the old Blackhawks all the time. Like,
oh yeah, no, these guys were legends. It was great, and like I said, Stan was kind of the coach. But Dennis, we get in a van with him and drive to a golf tournament.
So, you're like, what the hell?
Hockey players like to drink beer, so there was always cases of beer in the van, and I mean, it was a blast. We had a great time. Well, we weren't very good, so I mean,
so who cares? I mean, it was like Caddyshack. I mean, nobody cares, like, right?
Yeah, I was a mid to upper 70s shooter. So,
and you're the best on the team.
Good, but not very good. Yeah.
So my dad has this training aid called the Acuhnet, and so he's had since like the late 90s. And so one time, it must have been like 2003, 2004, we got an order come in, and it was from Stan Mikita, right? It's a Stan Mikita. Well, that's a pretty uncommon name, right? So I look at it, I'm like, Stan Mikita, it was from Florida. I remember this because my mom and dad were like super excited. And so then I sent an email because it was like, came through PayPal or whatever. So I sent an email, I'm like, are you the Stan Mikita played the Blackhawks in the 70s? He's like, yeah, I am. And my mom, so he says, then we end up sending a bunch of stuff to him. We're like, oh, we're big fans. We love it. And this is like, I don't know, is he still alive? I wonder. He passed away. That was that was 20 years ago. But that's how, so you, Dennis Hull, that's so crazy too. Because like my favorite
and he was just talking story the whole time. Like his hockey stories were way better than any golf story I had. So when we would just sat there and listen to him about fights and crazy stuff they did in the locker room and parties after the game, and it was fun.
I'm seeing they're in the Hall of Fame. Oh, that's right, duh. Yeah, because the Hulls like Dennis's brother is Bobby Hull.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and then he's Hall of Famer. And then Bobby Hull is Brett Hull's dad. And Brett Hull was like my favorite hockey player. I love Brett Hull. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you know Brett Hull, give him my number because I love Brett Hull. I had him and this is like, I grew up in the 90s and I played hockey in Arizona in the 90s. We had 2 rinks, right? So that was like pretty uncommon here. But I had like Brett Hull posters on my wall. But they call him the Golden Brett. That's what they used to call him. But I heard he was coaching. I think like somebody or like
I mean, pretty awesome, amazing,
crazy bloodline, right? To be that good. So you play golf in high school, in college, and then you graduate with your engineering degree. You're gonna go and become an engineer, so you think, and you get to Westinghouse. Where was Westinghouse at? Back in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So you went back home essentially, right? Which you probably wanted to do, and then you realize it sucks after 9 months, dude. That's exactly what happened to me. When I went and got my first job, I worked at America West for 5 months, and I was like, I'm out. Because you're like 22, it's like you don't have to do this. Like I don't know. That's what I realized. So then,
I had a family friend when I decided to get out of engineering who worked in Arizona at Red something Ranch
Red Mountain Ranch.
Red Mountain Ranch. So family friend, golf pro. I was going to go to work for him. Literally, as I'm packing my car to drive out there, he gets fired. from his job. So it's like, well, I'm committed to this. He gave me the names of a couple other pros, and I ended up at a place called Desert Highlands, which was the site of the first Skins game. So it was actually a pretty good trade.
That's a step up from Red Mountain.
A really good step up.
No, for real.
I ended up working for an absolute legend, a guy named Duff Lawrence, who was the first scholarship ASU golfer.
Wow.
Played on the tour in the 1960s, and then became club pro and worked at some amazing places: Canterbury back in Ohio, Desert Highlands, Paradise Valley. So I mean, he cemented my love for the game.
And he mentored you too, I bet, right? Like
100%. Yeah. Just a really great gentleman. And I mean, what a great place. You know where Desert Highlands is. It's
gorgeous.
It's an awesome place.
And back then too, in the 80s, it wasn't all built up like it is now. So
Looked a lot different. Happy Valley Road, man. There was nothing out
Desert and golf course. That was it. Now it's like, it's packed houses unless it's state land. And the properties out there are like $1 million plus easily.
Which doesn't seem to mean much these days, $1 million home. That's like,
in this real estate market. I had this conversation the other day with my wife, and like our neighbor down the street just sold their house for like 4 houses down for like $130,000 more than what we refied for last year when we put our pool in. It's like, wait, what? Why? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. But
no sense. You should come to California. It's its own brand of insane over here. That's for sure.
Well, Oceanside too. I couldn't imagine. That would be crazy. Like
Oceanside's, it's kind of the last frontier in North County, San Diego, and it's going to be a gem. But it was a military town. It's a little more rough and tumble, a little bit more like the full socioeconomic picture here, and a little bit like Pittsburgh. And my wife's actually from Cleveland, so we love it here. We absolutely love the community.
It's like perfect, right? Like it's normal people. It's not like the typical California inn.
It's not as bougie as my son would say.
It's like, yeah, or like going, yeah. I love San Diego County. If I could afford to live in San Diego County or North Cal, that would be my dream. It's
pretty great. And it's sort of the unofficial headquarters of the golf industry. So.
It really is. Honestly, there's like everyone. It's really weird like that. Yeah. So did you go to like PGA school and all that stuff? Or did you just like got mentored
I just got behind the counter and which was really beneficial to me in my career. I kind of learned golf from that side of the counter as an assistant pro. I mean, literally you're bringing out carts, you're standing behind, checking golfers in for their tee times. I eventually got to do some teaching and that helped, but it was great to see the business from that side of the fence before I got into the equipment and manufacturing side.
So how long were you a pro, like teaching pro?
About 3 years.
And then
at that point, I realized that assistant pro salary is, it's fun being assistant pro.
Non-existent.
It's not fun being paid like an assistant pro. So
I don't think it's really changed much because that's what my pro told me. He's like, you don't make anything, man. I'm like, for real? She's like, no, it sucks. I'm like, for real? I was like, oh, my buddy's a GM at a golf course. He's like, he doesn't make any money. I can tell you that. I'm like, really? I thought I'd be like making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Like, no, it doesn't work like that.
But at Desert Highlands, it was great. I got to work for a guy named Gary White, who was the kind of the head pro and teaching pro there. And he had a real love for equipment. So I started to get really interested in equipment. He'd get the old Maltby Golf Works book out, and we'd look through that about fitting and club building. And I thought, man, that's what I want to do.
This is cool.
Yeah. And so I ended up, one of the members at the club who was a scientist, had a patent that he got granted for a putter. And he's like, hey, you want to start a golf company? And I'm like, dude, I'm making $18,000 as an assistant year. Heck yeah, I want to start a golf company. Let's go. So we did, and it was called Reflex Golf. And it started out with a line of putters that this guy had a patent on. We weren't very successful, but it was a great experience for me. I mean, in my early 20s, I got to get on a plane and go over to Taiwan and China and start sourcing club heads and understanding how the supply side of the business works.
How cool is that? Because like you really have no baggage, right? Like it's not like you're young and you could learn and you can enjoy these opportunities that you probably wouldn't be able to do 20 years later, right? Like
for sure.
And it's so cool because like I mean, what year was this? Like 90, 92?
It was, like right around 90.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about it. There's no internet. There's no this is old school, like traveling, phone calls. If you're rich, you have a fax machine. I mean, like that's awesome. So like you really, that's that's the real way of.
Yeah. I remember getting a BlackBerry back then. I was like, whoa, what is this?
You're like this big old, like ginormous cell phone, like call me. I remember my dad had a cell phone in his car and he's like, don't make any phone calls on that. And I was like in high school, I was like, why not? And he's like, it'll cost like $2 a minute or $3 a minute. I'm like, well, why do you have it? He's like, oh no, it looks good. So
got to do that. And then, just kind of worked my way up the food chain, if you will. Worked for a couple other small manufacturers and then ended up at Titleist and spent 21 years at Titleist as a VP of marketing for golf clubs.
Wait. So you went from that. Okay, you skipped like a couple things here. So you went from
2 years.
So you're doing this putter, and then how long were you there?
A little more than a year and a half.
And then where'd you go?
Well, that company morphed into the licensee for Fila Golf. So Fila back then was an Italian sportswear brand.
Seriously?
Mostly in tennis. And they were looking to get into different hard goods. So they were licensing their name for shoes, for mountain bikes. They thought, hey, let's get into golf. So we actually we submitted a business plan, and lo and behold, we became the licensee for Fila Golf, which was absolutely crazy. Moved the company to California. So that was my first go around in Southern California, and worked for a guy named Miles Duty, who was executive vice president for Lynx Golf for many years.
Oh, wow.
And Lynx had a crazy meteoric rise there for a little while. You remember Freddie Couples and Ernie Els.
Yeah, like the mid 90s, late 90s. It was like, I remember.
Yep. So it was great working for Miles. And, he knew a lot about the industry. And then from there, I went to work for MaxFly in Greenville, South Carolina. And so at MaxFly, which was a golf ball company, I was in charge of clubs, gloves, and accessories. So I spent about 3 years there, an interesting jump to another golf ball company, Titleist, as, one of the club guys. So that was kind of my journey through the golfing food chain.
So you went to, when you went to Titleist, was that when it was still in Massachusetts, or was that when it was back in California?
It was, but the CEO, Wally Uline, who's a legend in the industry, had established kind of an R&D outpost in Carlsbad because he knew Carlsbad was the center of the equipment universe. So I never worked back in Massachusetts. I always worked out in Carlsbad for Titleist. So
I had Dean on the show, Dean Snell.
Oh, yeah.
And so, because he's telling me the same thing. Like when he moved back from Massachusetts to California, which I think is fascinating. I love like the history of product, right? And how it's developed over the years and where companies have moved to, especially now, because there's only so many brands, in hard goods, not in apparel and crap like that, but in hard goods, there's only so many. And I'd say
Southern California, I mean, at that point, because you're an aerospace guy, Southern California was sort of the home of aerospace. There was a lot of really talented engineers, tool makers, foundries, and the golf industry just kind of rode herd on that. I mean, we pulled a lot of talent out of the aerospace industry and used the aerospace supply chain in terms of the foundries. That all eventually went offshore, obviously, but that was kind of one of the reasons why the golf industry ended up in Carlsbad. There was just a lot of talent out here.
There's a lot of people there. I mean, like General Dynamics was there, Boeing was there. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've closed a lot of these factories down. Honeywell was there. I mean, it's kind of cool, like how that works out, where the talent's at a place and they don't really want to do that thing at whatever it might be, and then they're able to pull that talent across. I had this conversation with the CEO of Global Golf, and he said the same thing. He said that like when he built out his next version of the site, which really made it big, right, is that I think it was art.com or something. It's kind of a website, had a bunch of talent in where they're at in North Carolina, and they decided to move to California. And like these main people didn't want to move to California, so they had like essentially brilliant designers that they're looking for a job essentially. And he's like, he gobbled up everybody, and then that's what it kind of like catapulted him forward with his whole system. I was like, it is really interesting when you have the talent around you, how it can really, make or break a brand.
Yeah. And so it was It was great because we pulled a lot of aerospace talent. Guys in aerospace were like, yeah, work in golf. Heck yeah, I'd rather do that. So, and Titleist really built an incredible foundation in R&D and tool making and design and not just, technically like using CAD, but hand skills and things like that. And that, eventually led to having guys like Scotty Cameron and Bob Vokey. We had a legendary toolmaker named Don Anton. I mean, nowadays you just design a golf club on a computer. A CAD engineer just sits down and starts going. I mean, back then you made a model and you looked at it and you tested it. And so that was really fun to see how that kind of process developed. And I think that's one of the things that set Titleist apart was having those skills in-house. And getting to work with legends like that was great.
So what years were you there at Titleist?
Started in 95.
Oh wow. So like right when they started really gaining speed.
Left in 2016.
Wow.
So I think I can say this without getting in any trouble because their numbers are public now. But when I started at Titleist, it was about a $35 million club business. When I left Titleist, it was a $430 million club business.
That's crazy.
So yeah, over 21 years, think about all the great products that were introduced. And, we brought hundreds of products to market over that time in all the different categories. And we started slowly. I mean, like at the beginning, we were DCI irons and bullseye putters. Like that's what Titleist was known for. And then obviously adding Cameron and Vokey. I mean, eventually we built a nice metalwood business. But I mean, we had driver, fairway, hybrid, iron, wedge, putter, 6 or 7 categories you can talk about. You can maybe throw utility irons in there. We eventually filled them all out. And new products, what started out back then, life cycles were 3 or 4 years, that evolved to 2 years. And in some cases now, companies are introducing product every year, but 6 or 7 categories over 21 years, once or
plus
twice.
The balls, plus all the balls.
There was a lot going on. It was awesome.
What an amazing time to be in a company when it's growing, right? Like now it's like you have these juggernauts in the industry and it's like, but the process to get to that is just so. I mean, what was like you were high, right? Like so, you're like VP of product, right? You were freaking really high.
Product and marketing, more heavily on the product and product marketing and management side. I mean, I did brand marketing, but Titleist also had a very powerful brand marketing organization back in Fairhaven, where the headquarters were. So we got to draft off that a lot. And
that's cool.
One of the things that, we were always reminded of on the club side was that, hey, we don't own the Titleist brand. We just lease it from the ball guys. So don't screw it up.
So then did you retire from Titleist essentially? Because you were there for 20 plus years. Are you ready to just kind of do something different then at that point?
Yeah, I think it was, honestly, I think it was mutual. That was a long run. It's
a long time.
Yeah, it was great. And it really made me who I was as a professional. But I think, I was ready to move on and the company was ready to move on. And
yeah.
I mean, that's pretty typical, just because you're the guy that helps take a company from here to here doesn't mean you're the right guy to take it for the next chapter or story, and then I wasn't. So I moved on and that really allowed me to do some cool stuff, like start, Strand Sports, which is the swing line brand, and then go.
So let's talk about swing lines.
Yeah.
So how did you start out? Like how did all that take place? Like explain to the listeners what swing line is.
Well, I mean, when I left Titleist, I had a wealth of experience, obviously, and, but wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I did what most guys do is I'll hang a consulting shingle out and see what happens.
I'll be a consultant because I know so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think consultants make a lot of money. I think I'll do that. But no, I got a couple clients and then I was referred to a guy whose brother was named Allan Strand. And Allan was the creator of the Dandy putter line. So Dandy was a putter product that had its 15 minutes of fame. Vijay Singh actually won the Masters with a Dandy putter. So after that happened, they had a real nice run for a couple of years and then, crashed and burned like a lot of small golf companies.
I've heard that happen to a lot of, who else had happened to where they get that for, I know I talked to you about that, Seymour putters. I was talking to Seymour and they were telling me almost the same thing. Like, when in the 90s, they had their run initially, right? And then when Payne died, it was like, whoa, it just like, it's all in the show. Yeah. So it was like, it drops, right? And now it's like, we just lost our guy, and now it's like, how do you, it's crazy how that happened. Because basically when Payne Stewart won the first time with their putter, like their sales went like overnight. And they're like, we can't even service all these. Like, we're not even ready for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Allan was an inventor. He was a really Renaissance guy. He was a concert pianist. I mean, he was a classical musician. He taught putting out on the PGA Tour. And, he was also a real student of the golf swing. And he got to work with some really cool players out there. Ernie Els, Vijay, Gil Morgan. And he developed some ideas about the swing. And since he was an inventor, he couldn't really shut his mind off. He had a couple concepts on training aids that he sort of sketched out. Now, unfortunately, the sad part of the story is Allan got cancer and died very suddenly. So these ideas were just kind of sitting there. And I got hooked up with his brother, Everett, and looked at some of this stuff and said, Ev, why don't we just bring this to market? Let's start a company. And with my background in product design and development, I hired an industrial designer. We did proof of concept. We 3D printed prototypes. We really tested everything out, got a patent filed and granted for the device, and then launched it, brought it to market as Swing-A-Line.
And what year was that?
That was we started in 2017 and we really got the product on the market in 2019.
So I've used the goalpost. You guys sent me the goalpost and I actually did.
That's our latest. Yeah.
And I think it's awesome. Like
pretty cool little device.
I mean, it's essentially, think of what a goalpost looks like, you guys. Like that's what it is when you put on your putter, and it helps you hit the ball in the sweet spot. It helps it like go straight. And if you mess up your shot, guess what? It hits the top of the goalpost and it goes all the wrong direction. So it almost makes it so you have to train yourself to hit the dead center of the putter so you don't knock the ball out.
And there's a theme there. So, I mean, the original device, which is basically a wearable alignment rod, held together by some puffs and a stretchy cord. So it teaches a whole bunch of things, but it's visual and it helps you develop feel. So one of the things about golf, and as being a golfer, is your feel's all over the place. Your feel may differ one day to the next. And, you listen to a lot of, tour pros talk. They're always trying to connect what they feel with what's real, right? Because what they feel may not be actually what's happening. You can't see yourself as a golfer. You have to rely on an instructor or your buddy to say, hey, knucklehead, you're aiming 10 yards right,
Oh, yeah. And you don't even realize it. My pro that I work with, he does it all the time. He's like, dude, you're aiming 5 feet to the left. I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, so
you can't see that. You can't, separate yourself as a golfer and watch yourself swing. But so we thought, hey, let's have a device that has some really strong visual clues that helps you see what you're doing and at the same time feel. So the original Swing-A-Line device is like that. And then the goalpost is obviously very visual, alignment oriented, but it also makes you hit the center of the sweet spot. So you begin to groove your stroke to really feel what that's like. You develop a feel in your stroke that delivers the putter so you make center face contact every time.
So you really kind of grown the product line then, essentially, right? Like you're just refining it and making new stuff that, it's kind of cool because you start with one concept, one idea, and then you're branching out. So you have multiple products. So when did the goalpost come out then?
Just this past year.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's brand new. It's our newest product. And, like I said, we've been at it for a few years. We've had the product, the original product on the market starting in 2019. And we've kind of divided that up and made a couple other configurations. We have a bundled product. We have a pro product. So we really have a nice offering in terms of both the product and pricing. Like the goalpost is $39.95. I mean, almost a no-brainer. Really inexpensive. Great as a gift. Our base Swing-A-Line's $99. We have a $139 bundle and a $199 Pro. So, however deep you want to go, we feel like we've got a good product for you.
So the original Swing-A-Line was the first product, right? for the feel, right? The feeling, which essentially is like, to describe it, it's like there's things for your arms, right? And then there's like a rod, I guess, that connects the arm pieces. So you kind of feel what it's supposed to feel like when you're, holding a putter, right? Like the right positioning, I guess, is a better way of saying it.
Yeah. The great thing about swing line is you can use it for a driver, you can use it for an iron shot, you can use it for wedges, you can use it for a putter.
Yeah, exactly.
And how nice is that to be able to give a golfer the experience of feeling what a good golf shot feels like, feeling what a well-connected swing feels like. I mean, how do you give that to a golfer? It's hard. Maybe you go get a lesson from a pro and they kind of get you in the right position. But this is another device. This is a device that kind of gives you that gift. It's like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like. Okay, now I kind of get it.
I mean, once you learn, like that's the thing too. It's about learning the right way of doing it and then the repetition of doing it. And then you learn it, right? Then it's just how you do it. And most golfers don't know that. They try to figure out the game themselves. They think what feels is what it is, and it's not. And then they're like, why can't I hit the ball straight? Or why do I slice? Because you don't hit the ball right. I mean,
well, hey, being around Titleist for 21 years and being involved with all those great people and being around great tour players taught me one thing. Golf is hard, even for those guys. And, and imagine how much those guys struggle week to week. I mean, the average golfer, that was really the motivation for starting the company. It's like, hey, this is a great device we have sitting here. It needs a little work to be brought to market, but, it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor. I mean, for me and my partner, Ev, it's kind of our passion play, if you will. It's something we really enjoy. We both have full-time jobs as well.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in a second. So this is not like you are retired and like, I'm going to do a new golf company. He's like full busy, man. And he does this.
I'll tell you what, since leaving Titleist, I'm less retired than I was when I left Titleist. So yeah.
Well, it's cool because you get to pick and choose what you want to do though. Right. So it's almost like it's easy to get excited about something and then focus on it. But it's really fun, but still have a day job, which is like cool too. Right. Like, so tell everybody real quick, like what your day job is on top of Swing Online.
Well, my day job is I work for V1 Sports, and you just talked to our CEO, Brian Finnerty. So what a dynamic individual Brian
cool,
is.
so.
Yeah. And so this is my second stint at V1. So back when Brian became the main shareholder, the founder who was in place was a real technologist, but he wasn't doing anything good for the business. So he kind of got stuck.
Yeah.
And they needed to move on from him. So I came back and sat in the CEO chair for about 18 months and helped Brian transition the company. And then I came back to California because I had, Swing Line starting up. And I also got a job as the product guy and GM of North America for Honma Golf. So I kind of felt like I had one more thing to do on the equipment side. So I left V1 and now I've come back to them because the company's in a great spot and,
they're killing it.
A lot of exciting things happening, but yeah, no, I'm CRO at V1. So anything, involved in revenue, sales, marketing, and product, I'm helping Brian manage right now.
I mean, it's cool because you have so much experience in the golf industry. I didn't realize, the things you've done and developed and were part of, it's like, it just builds and builds and builds and builds. And really like, it wasn't like you went to school for this. Like, oh, I went to Harvard and then I became the XYZ of whatever. It's like, this is the old school way of doing it. You just work your way up through and learn, and you have so much value because you've experienced it, right? And then it's like when you see something really cool, you're like, I want to be part of that, right? And so, and then you may make it even more interesting, whatever that product is. And because you've worked for a lot of companies in the last, like, say, 5 years, let's say. Well, in your whole career, essentially. But like, they're all cool companies and they've all built on it. And then I love hearing about the older school, like the old version or the old brands that don't exist, but had like short runs, right? But they're almost like one-hit wonders. But people are like, oh, I remember that company. Whatever happened to them? Because they didn't know how to run. They couldn't get past that point, right?
Yeah. No, I've had so many great experiences and interacted with cool people. Both, Titleist was amazing. There were so many great people there. But even at Titleist, when we were trying to find our footing and figure out, how are we going to get into the club business? Were we going to kind of build it ourselves or go out and buy it from someone outdoors. So, I mean, we did a project.
That's a big decision, right?
Big decision. We did a project with Tom Stites, who ended up being the R&D guy at Nike. I did a project with Mura over in Japan, who has his own brand now. So even exposure to guys like that, you know, really talented designers and engineers. And being an engineer, I always had such a great respect for engineers and, you know, what they were able to accomplish. And I always felt like engineers needed some help kind of drawing the good ideas out of them and making it in a packageable and presentable form for the market. So I've always kind of lived in that space between, you know, R&D and development and the market, and, you know, on the market side, sales and marketing. And I think, you know, call it what you want, product manager, product owner, product creator. I mean, that's a bridge that has to exist or you won't have success. So, and I take a lot of pride in the 21 years of product that I helped, you know, bring to market at Titleist. And it's been so much fun. And I applied some of that to Swing Align and the training aid product. And I'm applying some of that to V1 as well. So it's been a great ride.
So what's new coming out? I mean, you just came out with the goalpost for Swing Align. Was there any other new products coming out soon? Or is that like the latest one? And are you in development or what's going on?
That's the latest one. We've got some ideas on the table for a device that would help you get your hands and wrists into the right position at impact. Cool. And it'll be, you know, along the lines of what we're doing now. There'll be a visual component to it. There'll be a feel component to it. We've got a really cool grip that we've developed that I'm not sure what we're going to do with that yet, but we'll see. So, and then, you know, one of the next steps potentially for Swing Align is, since we have a training aid product, is to offer we have a lot of great instruction content, but even to take that further, you know, not just to sell people a device, but actually help them with some advice or content or even lessons to help them get better. So that's on the horizon for Swing Align.
So, I mean, what's kind of cool too is because you have the experience and you have the relationships and you work with V1, it's like you have the product too, that you could actually bring in some cool content while using the Swing Align and the other technologies that you work with V1 to show like, hey, this is how you use it, or this is what you need to do, or I don't know. It's a good spot to be in, I think.
Definitely.
So are you going to retire anytime soon? No.
I hope so.
No, you're not. Whatever. You'll never retire. Yeah.
I just had a big life event here the last few months.
What?
We just had our first grandchild. So that was great.
You're a
my
grandpa?
oldest son,
Shut the hell
my
up,
oldest son, Connor, who runs Swing Align on a day-to-day basis, just had his first child. So it's pretty awesome.
Boy or girl?
Girl.
Are you like in love with the baby?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Yep.
It's crazy, right?
And I have two sons. We had two sons. So my wife and I are like, oh my gosh, a girl. It's the best.
Oh, I bet your wife's over the moon.
Oh, she's, yeah.
I have
crazy.
2 boys. So we have a family of 4. So we're just like you. And my wife's like fully outnumbered on everything. But here's the thing with boys, if you guys don't have kids yet, boys are like super attached to their moms. Like,
oh yeah.
It's crazy. And dad's like the friend, right? Like, and then, but the mom has control of that household. Don't kid yourself.
But it's funny, man. Isn't it funny how life works? Like when you're young and full of yourself, you don't really see yourself as a parent. Like, I don't know if I'm parent material. Then you have kids and like some gene clicks in. And then, you don't ever see yourself as a grandparent. Like, oh, grandparents, they're old, And
then it makes you all sad. You're like, what the hell? I'm old now.
And when you become a grandparent, you're like, oh man, this is awesome.
Like my son is about to go into middle school, like 6th grade. I'm depressed about that because I'm like, what happened? Like what happened the last 5 years? I remember him starting kindergarten, like it feels like it was like last year, and he's getting at that age now where he gets so like mouthy, like, and I'm like, wait, what did you say?
Oh, trust me, it gets worse. Believe me.
My son was called in the principal's office yesterday, and I was like, I'm not getting that story. It's a long story, but still, I was not expecting that. And it was some silly stuff, but like even still, when he came home, my wife took care of it. It was not that big of a deal. So I was like, so I got this weird call. I told him, I got this weird call from your principal today. You know what that's about? And he's just like, we sit down and have a talk, Dad? And I was like, don't worry. I'm like, I'm just messing with you, man. I already know this is about, so don't worry about it. But I was like, oh crap. So it makes time goes by so fast. That's why you gotta enjoy it, right? And do what you love.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And choose.
For me, I mean, having my son involved in swing line, like
that's the best thing in the world, right?
He is swing line. He runs it. Now, he may not ever have the same passion for playing golf as I do, but it's just been really good for him to, he does all the marketing, he does all the operations stuff. I mean, it's been fantastic for him, and it's been great for us as a family. It's really cool.
So when my dad started Acuhit, I just graduated college, right? It got patented, it got trademarked, all that stuff, right? And so it was like 99, 2000 around that time. Same thing. Like I was in flight school. My dad's like, well, if you want to run this Acuhit thing, I don't have time for it because I'm busy with my full-time job. So he's like, that's what kind of where I gained my chops in the golf world. And this is not my background, but this is early internet days. And so what do you do when you have a training aid in the year 2000? Like, how the hell do you get it out there? Right. Like, and you don't have any connections. You're nobody. You're this guy who invented something. And all I did is like, I would just, whatever, Lycos or whatever search engine I used. I would look up different golf magazines. I would find out who their editors were. And I would just send letters, like real old fashioned letter, and say, hey, would you be willing to check this out? Or, and we got in a lot. That's how we initially got all of our traction, was because a lot of these guys tested it out and they're like, hey, this is cool. We'll write about it. I mean, same thing. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for that. I know that's like, I did everything. I did.
Not an easy journey, is it?
No. And it's like back then making a website, you had to hire some guy and it like wasn't easy or, so pretty much. Yeah.
It's easier now, but I mean, differentiating yourself.
It's never easy.
Yeah. In that space, man, the training aid space is crazy. So, because you have a lot of garage shop inventors, kind of like we started, and there's a ton of product out there. Some of it good, some of it not so good. So it's a difficult space to compete in.
And then we got on like golftrainingaids.com when it first came out. And my dad like got on to became friends with, was it Gary Wyron and Dane Wyron? They started that. And like
Dr. Gary.
Yeah. So it was like, and Dane was his son. I remember that because I used to work with Dane. And like, I don't know, that was 21 years ago, which is hard for me to even fathom. Right. But a different time. I still think though it's hard as hell to start a brand in golf, unless you just, because I do a lot of products. So like I feel like I have the pulse on what's happening in product right now, because I always see it comes across literally gets sent to me. So there's a lot of brands out there starting, right? Yeah. But whether they're going to finish is the other question. There's a lot of copycats out there.
And it's important. And we debate that all the time. Like we want to sell product. So we want to market product to sell, but at the same time, you have to build a brand. You have to build trust. You have to build the trust elements. And
how do you do that? Right.
Influencers that, give people the confidence to buy your product. So
it doesn't really work. I'm sorry. We can get a whole other show about the whole influencer thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why when I do stuff, I don't charge. It's like, hey, you don't know me. I don't know you. Let's see if this thing even works. Right. Like I'm not going to, yeah. That's the hard part, right? Because it's not so much having a good product in these days. It's more about how in the hell do I get it out there? Because there's so much noise, right? Like, and it's definitely a pay to play.
Now influencers come from all over, they kind of self-create themselves on the internet. But I mean, for me, back in the day, influence was the pyramid of influence, PGA Tour pros at the top, and then club professionals and competitive amateurs, and then, average golfers who would look to those people at the top of the pyramid to see what they were using or what they were doing, or what kind of training aid do they use, or how do they, work with their instructor. And then, that influences what, people at the bottom of the pyramid buy. So that was influence.
And what's the pyramid? But what's the pyramid now? I have no idea. Like
you're an influencer now. Right? You're in the pyramid.
Influencer. Nobody. Now I think it's all bullshit. Like all that, seriously, because people will be like, number one, how easy it is to buy followers on any kind of device. Like it's not that hard. And so it's like, you look at different brands, or you look at not brands, but like influencers, and you think like, oh man, that guy has 40,000 followers. And then you look at it and it's like, it's all bought. You could tell. And it's just like, well, I don't know.
You know what? I mean, I think authenticity is important. And to me, I think golfers can smell something that's not authentic from a mile away. There's people
because they're educated buyers. They're not some guy or gal buying something I don't know. It's like, when you buy something in golf, it's never cheap, right? So it's like, you have to have some kind of education level to like, be like, oh, either you can't afford it or you're like, oh, I don't have $500 to spend on the driver right now. I don't know. I agree. That's why I started the blog, honestly, because I'd walk into, a big box retailer. I'm like, hey, this is before I got into this, right? I was like, hey, what's the newest driver? Because I didn't have time to figure that out. And they'd be like, oh, this is the best. And I'd hit it. And I'd be like, is it really? Because I'm not hitting it that well, And then I'm like, it's all bull crap, dude. It's like, I want to know what's good or what other people think, not the guy trying to sell it to me. But I mean, I find that's just really cool that your son helps you out, though. Honestly, you don't hear that often.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's been fun and rewarding for both of us. So, and helping him develop, the skills that he's going to use when, he moves on from Swing a Line.
No,
so
it's badass.
For me, it's been good.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. You are a legend in my mind now.
I don't know about that, but I did enjoy it. And I've got a picture of you, man. That picture behind you is awesome. Arnie's a Pittsburgh guy, so I'm a Pittsburgh
Arnold
guy.
Palmer.
To me, that connects.
He just epitomizes what I love about the game. Like he reminds me of my grandfather a lot too. So it's just like a badass golfer who's a good dude. You know what I mean? That's what I think Arnie is. And so
He was. Yeah.
I don't know. He's just a good dude, like old school, right? Like, I don't know. I have a lot of respect for the olden days, I guess, of the 50s and 60s. Well, cool. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
And you will be seeing an unboxing of the Swing a Line in the coming months. And so thanks for sending that over to us. And where can people find Swing a Line?
Easy website to remember, swingtrainer.com.
Oh my God. How'd you get that domain?
That was the universe telling me that we had to launch this product. When I saw that URL,
holy crap.
I was like, I'm grabbing that and we're launching this company.
You know how hard it is to find that kind of, like, honestly, that is hard as hell. I can't believe you found that. It's not like, oh, swingalign1234.org, or something like that. Like, yeah. So what is it again? Swing a Line, Swing Trainer. What'd you say it was?
Swingtrainer.com.
Oh my God, dude. You got it. I'm jealous. Well, cool. Well, check them out, you guys. They have all kinds of cool products. Thanks for being on the show today, Chris. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
You're going to beat me at golf?
Stay connected on and off the show by visiting golfersauthority.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Golf is always more fun when you win.
Stay out of the beach and see you on the green.